everyone, my name is Dillon Gonzalez. I'm the editorial director of GeekVibesNation.com and also a co-host of the Home Dance Film Festival podcast. And welcome to a brand new episode of No Streaming Required, your weekly deep dive into all the latest and greatest in the world of physical media. And I want to wish everyone a happy Halloween week. It is that spooky time of year, and I have a pretty appropriately spooky episode. We have some great titles from Warner Brothers, Sony, the Ocean Distribution Vinegar Syndrome family. We have a lot of fun titles that have been eagerly anticipated. So I'm going to dig right in. Just for those who are new to the channel, just know that I do usually write about most of the titles I cover on GeekVibesNation.com if you want a more in-depth analysis of any of these. But I'm going to try to give you a good overview of each of these titles, including one of the most anticipated of this year. It is the 4K debut of A Nightmare on Elm Street, the original horror franchise starter here. So this is the first outing for old Freddy Krueger, and we have it on 4K. This is a great improvement from the old Blu-ray. That was an ancient VC1 encode. It was very lacking, and now we finally got a new 4K restoration in HDR10. I wish this was in Dolby Vision. I just was talking last week about some Warner titles that are manufactured on demand that are getting the Dolby Vision treatment, and then their mainline titles like this are just getting HDR10. Make it make sense. I don't know what is going on. But if you had that old Blu-ray, you will see immediate improvement even with just HDR10. It still looks very bright and colorful and all just like the best it's ever looked. That is not to say it is without its problems. It is an imperfect release, besides just the Dolby Vision stuff. It has some filtering and some just like digital cleanups that are not exactly necessary, but studios seem to think that they're necessary a lot of the times. That make this portions of this movie just look not as textured and naturally filmic as it should be. It is not atrocious. There have been much worse examples of this on the format from studios that I will not name, because but overall it is there's some grain on this transfer. There is a semblance of a sheen of grain, but it is just very light compared to probably what it should be from a film of this vintage and its camera stock of what it was shot on. But that does not take away from what it does right. There's a lot more detail and texture. This is the first time we are getting the unrated version of this film, I think maybe since ever, if not at least since like the VHS days. It's only a couple of extra seconds of gore, but it is precious seconds of gore that fans have been wanting for a very long time. So you get that option of getting the original theatrical cut or the unrated cut. And the black levels, they are not the deepest. There's a little bit of crushing going on. Some shadow detail is a little bit lost at times, but overall you are getting much more from the image than you ever have before. The Freddy Krueger makeup is much more detailed and textured and gooey and stuff, and overall it's just a very nice looking transfer. I know a lot of people, there's a lot of different conflicting reports about this. I think maybe another, like a boutique label handling this probably would have handled it a lot better, but Warner Brothers typically does not license out their like A+ titles to boutique labels. So this is what they did in-house, and overall I think it's a very good effort that could have been great. This does include a new Atmos track along with the original theatrical audio, which is very important because Warner typically will omit original like mono or stereo audio, the original theatrical track, in favor of like a new Atmos track if they make one. Luckily, they have included both here, and more important, like even better, they've included it in lossless audio, DTS 2.0 audio for the theatrical track. So you get all the original sound effects and all that good stuff. It is maintained for those who are artistically pure and want that experience. That is included here. If you do want to check out the Atmos track, it also has some of its flaws. It is one that you will have to deal with some changed like buried sound effects that should be included that like on the original mix that were like in this new mix are not as prevalent, or they're just missing. These stem back to some changes that were made in the like stereo tracks in previous releases that just were missing sound effects and stuff. So it is a nice spacious soundtrack, the Atmos track, but I think the more rewarding track is the original theatrical audio, which itself, its main issue is that it's mixed a little low, so you might have to crank it up a couple more decibels than you usually do for a normal listening experience. But once you do, it sounds really great, and overall it's very consistent. So you have the option, you have at least one really good option and one interesting option with some flaws. So you have, as you can see, you only get the 4K disc here, so no Blu-ray option, but you do have the special features on the 4K disc. From what I can tell, this ports over all previous archival special features, no new special features, but you get a commentary, 2 commentary tracks, a retrospective, a making of, and a couple other featurettes here that go into all the facets of this franchise and everything. So is this a perfect release? No, but it is a very good release. It is, especially compared to the old ancient Blu-ray release, it's a big improvement. He's one of the most iconic horror villains of all time, so you know you're going to want to own him in the best quality possible. So A Nightmare on Elm Street from Warner Brothers, worth that upgrade if you're a fan. Hopefully with the sequels, Warner won't be so precious and they will license them out to some boutique labels, because from what we hear from some of the directors, those are being worked on. There are new restorations being worked on, so hopefully we can get a nice box set or just at least really great individual releases for the remaining Nightmare franchise. Heading over to another highly anticipated 4K release. There's a pair of them. There's 2 M. Night Shyamalan 4K title debuts this week, and that the first one is his breakout, The Sixth Sense. So I don't think I need to go too much into either of the movies I'll be talking about here because they're such classics, but Bruce Willis, Haley Joel Osment, Toni Collette, and I was just raving last week whenever I was featuring Deadpool and Wolverine, how excited I was that Disney had returned to putting Dolby Vision on their releases, and how it seemed like they were going to be doing that moving forward. And I had to make that caveat with these releases because they released the same day as Deadpool and Wolverine, and this and my next title, Signs, both just have HDR10. So hopefully with catalog titles moving forward, those will be Dolby Vision, but I think this was kind of in a transitional period. Hopefully, hopefully on future catalog titles, we will get that Dolby Vision. But even with that, this is, once again, like Nightmare on Elm Street, a huge upgrade from the ancient Blu-ray of The Sixth Sense, which was released in the early days of Blu-ray from Disney. It had a myriad of problems. It lacked a lot of texture. It's just kind of like a smeary mess. Very old codec. It just, encoding, everything was a mess. So this is one that's been desperately in need of a 4K upgrade, and I'm especially excited about both of these Shyamalan releases because it is very rare these days that we get a catalog title from Disney. We usually get maybe 2, 3, 4 a year. We got the Cameron titles earlier this year, like The Abyss and True Lies and all that. And now we got a couple more here. And I'm really glad about that because huge upgrade on 4K. The colors have much more depth and stuff. This isn't the most colorful film. It's a very overcast film set in Philadelphia, but all the nuances within the video are much more pronounced and much more impressive. And especially when we're dealing with, like, this is a very dark, shadowy movie. A lot of it takes place in dark hallways or shadowy, like, just nighttime excursions with the Haley Joel Osment character exploring his house and seeing all kinds of horrifying reveals. All of the, like, the illumination from the lights and the deep, like, dark hallways, like, the black levels are handled nicely. The highlights from the illumination of the lights are handled very well. There's no blooming or anything like that. Everything is just kind of dialed in right to where you want it in terms of contrast. And then all the nuances within, like, the production design and clothing, all that stuff, it is much more vibrant and lovely. And it's just a much more textured, natural film. And it's what we've been really wanting as Shyamalan fans for these movies. DTS 5.1 audio sounds great, and it ports over all the special features, a couple of featurettes on the making of and publicity materials, and making of stuff. So if you're a fan of M. Night Shyamalan and you love The Sixth Sense as well, this is a major upgrade and you will not want to miss out. As I've already shown, the next title is Signs, one of his other big breakouts. We already have Unbreakable on 4K. It was released a few years ago. It was also great. That release came with a remastered Blu-ray. Neither of these two Blu-ray releases have a remastered Blu-ray. They have the old ancient Blu-rays included in these releases. So you especially can see the differences and upgrades in these. But if you are only Blu-ray capable, will not be an upgrade for you. You need to be 4K capable for these releases. So HDR10 with this one as well, with all the cornfields and stuff. The HDR is really popping here. It has a lot more to work with, and the colors are just a lot more impressive and vibrant and all that good stuff. This also has a lot of moments that take place in dark, shadowy areas. So you have deep black levels, all that good stuff. And upon a rewatch, this is just like, it always gets better. It's just a creepy alien invasion tale that just slowly builds and builds, and great performances from Mel Gibson and Joaquin Phoenix. No matter how we may feel about certain performers in this movie, these days, in this movie, they're really great, and it has a really deep cast of characters that I really loved seeing. Like Merritt Wever has a very small role in this one that I really appreciated. And so yeah, 5.1 audio as well. Sounds great. Carries over the archival special features, including some deleted scenes, an hour-long making-of featurette or documentary. So, Signs and The Sixth Sense. The worst thing I can say about these releases are they have terrible cover art, but quality-wise, they're tops. So, grateful for Disney continuing at a glacial pace to put out older titles on 4K. And I hope we get more because they have such a rich catalog. We need it. I am going to go on a run to one of my favorite corners of the physical media game. I am going to the OCN distribution family. I'm going to start with a label that I have consistently mispronounced, and I'm determined to get it right this episode. The first release I want to talk about from Cinematographe is Shanks. This is a 4K release of a very weird movie from William Castle. It was the last one he did before his untimely passing. And people might know him best from his old gimmicky stuff with like House on Haunted Hill and movies of that sort. So this comes out here, and you got a nice 2-disc release and a included essay with publicity photos and all kinds of stuff in here. Lots of great material here. 4K disc, Blu-ray disc. The Blu-ray disc is from the same new 4K restoration. So with these OCN distribution titles, I'll give a little bit more context to those because they aren't as well known. Shanks stars Marcel Marceau, the famous French mime, as a mute puppeteer who meets an old man who kind of teaches him about the potential of basically puppeteering corpses. It starts out with like a frog and like bringing it back to life through like electrodes and stuff, and it kind of transitions to human testing and like puppeteering humans through like electricity and stuff. And so this leads, it's kind of like a dark fantasy comedy horror film of just this puppeteer who has like a horrible family, who ends up puppeteering them, and it just kind of gets into like a very weird liminal space. And it's a wild movie. It's weird in a very good way. It's 70s weird, which you love to see. It's very funny, absurd, distressing at times. It's all the good stuff that you want from a movie of this sort. So William Castle, in my opinion, went out on a very good note, and Cinematographe has followed in turn with a really good release. This is a new 4K restoration of the original camera negative. It is in HDR10, which is pretty standard for Cinematographe and Vinegar Syndrome at large. They don't usually do Dolby Vision, but it looks very nice. There are, even with the restoration, there are still small little deficiencies here and there just with the source. Like you'll see maybe like an errant line, or just kind of something that's baked into the source that it's not super distracting, but it's not like a absolutely pristine transfer, but it's fantastic overall. And this has a new commentary track, an interview, video essay. They've really pulled out all the stops for this one. Has the original mono soundtrack. That sounds really nice. It's very stable, not a lot of like hissing or popping or anything like that. So if you like weird 70s cinema, Shanks will do you right. It's another cool acquisition from Cinematographe, and I just love everything that Justin Liberty is doing over there, and I just cherish every title that comes out from them because I always know it's going to be a very caring release from them. I'm going to the partner labels of OCN for a stretch here, and one that I really want to highlight that I'm excited about is a new partner label, one that I've been petitioning for years for them to join OCN. That is Magnolia, and their release of Murder Party from Jeremy Saulnier, who did like Green Room and Blue Ruin. He just recently did the Netflix breakout Rebel Ridge. This is his no-budget debut that was shot with a hope and a prayer back in the day in the mid-2000s. And this one's a lot of fun. This one will actually make good Halloween viewing because it takes place on like Halloween night. And it's a very simple premise. A kind of dopey dude finds a random invitation on the ground that invites him to a murder party. And he wants to make friends and stuff. He goes to this murder party, and it is as advertised. Whenever he gets there, there are some people that want to murder him, and these people are artists. So they are trying to like make an artistic statement, and the night kind of unravels from there. It's very gory, it's very funny, it's like very dark comedy. It's very satirical of like what people view as art and kind of like artistic ambition and stuff. It's but for those who don't want like those metatextual levels, if you just want a gory, violent good time, it does get there. You might find it a little bit sluggish in that concern, but if you're on board with the tone, there's a lot of really funny stuff, even in between all the gory details. I really liked it. It's a great discovery for me, and it shows that Jeremy was a talent just from the beginning. Okay. This was shot on like video and or tape is what I think they're called, because this says upresed from the original tape material. I would not have guessed that if I was watching this blind and like didn't know about this, because it looked very like just like a really solid early like digital effort. It doesn't look like a shot on video or anything like that, because I've covered stuff like that, like Scarlet Diva in recent months, where it looks very like off and very non-organic, but this looks very nice. It almost looks filmic in its kind of low budget constraints, but what I'm saying is this looks very nice, upscaled in HD. And I think anyone who's been wanting this kind of early, lesser known effort will be very pleased by it. Has a great audio soundtrack as well. Really good amount of special features, including a interview, 2 commentary tracks, a making of documentary, and all of this has been approved by the directors. So Jeremy was involved with the transfer, and I think that's probably why it looks so great. You also get I think I showed off this booklet here with essays and stuff. So Magnolia, I'm so glad they're part of the OCN distribution family now, and they've done a really nice job with Murder Party. Going to another one of my favorite labels from the OCN family, IFC Films release of the Snowtown Murders. So this is from director Justin Kurzel, who has a new movie coming out later this year called The Order. He's done other films like Nitram and True History of the Kelly Gang. He's an Australian director. And this is a Australian true crime story. This is about some horrific murders that happened in the 90s, and just kind of depicts that in the background of that. So what I had heard about this before I watched it is that it was a tough watch, bleak, hard to get through, and I completely understand that. After watching it, it is a very, very bleak movie. There are several depictions of sexual assault in this, and implied harm towards children. But what this basically boils down to is like a young man like getting kind of brainwashed by his mom's new boyfriend, who seems like he is doing good by trying to take out some some creepers around town and stuff, and just people who have really generally preyed upon like the vulnerable amongst us. But he is also very sadistic, and how he kind of pressures this young man who is a survivor of sexual assault himself to kind of take his power back in a very violent way. It can just be a very unsettling, tough to watch movie. I think it's very well done. I know it won some prizes at Cannes whenever it debuted, and it's a very impressive movie, but it's not for the faint of heart. It doesn't start out as super grisly, but it gets there, and there are also depictions of like animal deaths and stuff in this. So if you're sensitive to that, be aware of that. It's just a very gnarly movie in a lot of times, and just torture, all kinds of stuff in this. So not for the faint of heart, but if you're into it, if you're into like kind of like intense true crime, the Snowtown Murders, it's a very good movie. You just have to make sure you can handle it. And this transfer looks very nice. Good Blu-ray transfer, holds up very well to its source. No egregious like digital nuisances or compressions artifacts or anything like that. It's not the most colorful film, but it's saturated very well, and you get some special features, including 2 commentary tracks, one of which is new, video essay, interview with Justin Kurzel, some deleted scenes, and some other stuff. So overall, Snowtown Murders, very much worth checking out if you have the stomach for it. Heading over to another partner label, I'm going to Film Movement, and we have Bertrand Bonello's Coma from 2002, or 2022, excuse me. So a couple years ago, this was shot and released during the COVID pandemic, and this really deals with kind of like the effects of isolation, and kind of how social media plays into that. The core conceit of this film, which it expands beyond, is just a young girl who is kind of isolated from her friends. She tries to connect with them through like FaceTimes and all that kind of stuff. But she kind of gets cast under the spell of this social media influencer who kind of she kind of puts her in like a hypnotic state and really starts to control her life in kind of interesting ways. But this kind of expands out and through uses of like animation and text on screen and all kinds of stuff to kind of comment on social media's influence on our moods and just a general like the effects of isolation and feeling othered from people and dissociated. It's a very interesting movie. It's very ambitious, and I think I'm not someone who wants to kind of particularly revel in like pandemic movies and like go back to that a lot, but I wouldn't consider this necessarily like a COVID movie. I think it's more so, I think these are themes that play well universally and not just within the confines of a pandemic. And it works out very well. It's a very Bertrand Bonello. This is not my favorite movie from him. There's also a new release of a Blu-ray upgrade of his movie Zombie Child, which I liked a little bit more. That was released in tandem with Coma, and I have a review of that on Geek Vibes Nation. But for this one, it's still a very good movie. 2022, so it's a new HD movie. Looks good. All the colors are very nice. There's like kind of like a Simon Says kind of video game with all like the red, yellow, blue, green. That's very important to the plot. Those colors hold up very well, saturated very well. And there's also a commentary track from Bertrand Bonello, the director. So overall, good release, good movie, and he keeps putting out very interesting, ambitious movies. He has another movie that was out earlier this year called Beast that's coming out from Janus Contemporaries in about a month or two. So if you want to collect them all, just like get all of his movies. I think they're all interesting in their own way. So Coma from Film Movement, definitely worth checking out. Going to Film Movement Classics, this is a re-release of The Reflecting Skin, which was first released in 2019. So this is Viggo Mortensen and it's kind of like a childhood reflection of childhood, and kind of this almost feels like kind of purgatory-esque place where a young boy is living a kind of a life that is very tough, and he kind of suffers various forms of abuse, not overt abuse all the time, but more so through just kind of the way he is being raised, and just I don't want to give a lot of spoilers in terms of how his parents play into this equation, but the way that trauma lingers within him and how he doesn't really know how to process the world, it goes throughout the movie, and that most manifests in his father telling, kind of putting into his head the idea of vampires through like this story that he is reading, and he begins to think that his neighbor is a vampire who is basically trying to kill his brother, and how that all the ramifications of this in regards to the perceived violence of a child in contrast with the actual violence that is being committed within this small community. It's very interesting, but the one thing that holds me back from really truly loving this movie is that the main young kid is insufferable. But I understand why he acts the way he does, but that does not make it any more easy to stomach it a lot of times, just because he ruins a lot of people's lives through inaction and just general being a dumbass. And so it's a struggle for me to love this movie. I still very good, but just seeing such a frustrating child, who can be like, he also, this is simulated animal cruelty with a bullfrog at the beginning of this movie. I do want to give a content warning for that as well. It's not a consistent part of the movie, but that I just do want to put that content warning in. But overall, good movie, but just very frustrating aspects of it for me personally. But the release, this was first released in 2019, being re-released with an optional slipcover. So if you want that, make sure to go to the OCN Distribution Vinegar Syndrome website, or go to select retailers like Diabolic and stuff. They always typically have a few slipcovers whenever they put up their allotment. So this comes from a 2K restoration, which the director notes in the booklet is the first time that the film looks how it's supposed to look. It's supposed to be a little bit hyper-saturated and kind of otherworldly. It's always been released in like the wrong aspect ratio and just looked awful, and he's very pleased with this release. It has a commentary track from that director and a 44-minute retrospective, which does include new interviews that were new with Viggo Mortensen, which I especially appreciated, along with the director and everything. So, Reflecting Skin, pretty interesting movie with some personal caveats. Another one from Film Movement Classics, we are going over to Japan and their release of the Red Peony Gambler 1 through 3. So these are the first 3 of, I believe, 8 movies in this series. So Red Peony Gambler, the first one, Red Peony Gambler 2, Gambler's Obligation, and the third movie, Red Peony Gambler, the Flower Cards Game. So this is a really interesting series. It has the same actress throughout these 3 movies. She is a real badass. She is a gambler, but she also is very nice with a sword whenever she needs to be, either through trying to enact revenge on behalf of her father, or trying to prevent people from cheating at dice games. Either way, she is up for like getting down to business. The first one is a little bit more serious. It's more deliberate in its kind of intentions of just trying to get revenge for her father. The other 2 movies, she gets into situations where she is trying to help out people or trying to protect certain people. And those are also very good, but they are get a little bit more absurd or a little bit silly at points. But I think all 3 of these movies are consistently pretty interesting and very much worth your time. And just this has been a boon for Asian cinema over the past few years on physical media. So this is just another example of some Japanese classics being rediscovered for an American audience. These have been given new restorations from the best available elements, the original film elements. And they largely look very nice. There are small little things here and there, maybe like a nick or scratch here and there, or maybe a brief color fluctuation, but overall it's a very nice, consistent transfer. I think fans of this kind of this output of cinema from Japan will pretty much be familiar with this type of what this will look like, and it's very consistent. The audio tracks are also pretty solid as well. Minor brittleness here and there, but overall pretty good. Good number of special features on here, including some video essays, a commentary track on the third movie, an introduction from Alex Cox on the third movie, and just the booklet and everything. So Film Movement Classics have done a nice job with Red Peony Gamblers 1 through 3 set, and I do hope we get the remainder of the series because I had a lot of fun with these. Heading over to ETR Media, this is my final partner label title. This is a long title, so I will read it and then show you. This is The Power of Grayskull, The Definitive History of He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So, anyone familiar with ETR Media will know that they release a lot of these kind of entertainment-focused documentaries. They've done ones on Galaxy Quest and Nintendo and Clue and stuff. So they've been picking up a lot of interesting documentaries, and this is one of the better ones, I would say, because it gets actual people who worked on like the He-Man development of the He-Man character and like the toys. This goes through everything, like the toys, TV series, the live action movie. Just it looks at it from a development business standpoint, also a fandom standpoint, and all of this is balanced very well. Sometimes a movie like this can be a little bit too like, oh, wasn't it cool this happened, and blah, like just like a nostalgia trip. And there's bits of that, but there's a lot more information about like the trials and tribulations of this and how this was basically a craven money grab that worked, and because they just needed something that would sell toys and appeal to young boys and stuff. And they also do get a little bit into the sister toy, the She-Ra toys, which also has an additional featurette on here specifically for She-Ra in the special features. But and they also get people like Frank Langella and Dolph Lundgren from the live action movie to speak on their experiences, and it's nice to see Frank Langella had a ball like as Skeletor and everything. So if you're a fan of He-Man in any iteration, this is a really fun documentary, and it's very much worth your time. I think I showed off the other cover art, but I'll do it just to be sure. And there's a nice number of special features here, including 33-minute behind-the-scenes making-of featurette, how this all came together from the creatives, around 72 minutes of deleted scenes. That's 4 large chunks that add up to 72 minutes. A 21-minute featurette on She-Ra, as I mentioned, and 2 hours of raw material that was just shot for this. So lots of special features, keep you busy. And so this He-Man documentary, Power of Grayskull, The Definitive History of He-Man and the Master of the Universe. Good pickup for fans. I had a good time. I'm looking at my He-Ra and She-Ra DVDs right over on the wall, and it just makes me want to go revisit those right away. Heading over to, we were just talking about He-Man and the cartoons and all that stuff. Heading to a different cartoon, much more adult, is the Paramount release of South Park, Not Suitable for Children. This is a special. This is a like 40-ish minute special that South Park has been doing the past few years with their, they have a kind of weird output where they're supposed to deliver a number of specials for Paramount and like a season that doesn't count as part of the season. So that's why we're getting all these individual special Blu-rays, which is kind of ridiculous. Just the amount they charge for just a special compared to what a season costs isn't that much different, and you get more with a season. But this is how it's being done for now. So you have Not Suitable for Children here. And as a special, this is modern South Park, which means there are moments that are very funny. There are moments that do not touch upon the greatness of the original run, but overall it's a good time. And it's Matt and Trey kind of in this one, kind of dealing with, kind of commenting on like influencer culture and how like influencers pushing people to buy certain things and like the fandom that is kind of surrounding that in order to make yourself seem cool. So they got Cred here, which is like an energy drink that is being pushed by one of the influencers, and how that kind of makes all the children in South Park go crazy, while at the same time you have Randy trying to start an OnlyFans, and that goes into some wild directions as well. There is a content warning that there is like nudity in this at the beginning, and I kind of laughed that off because it's South Park and it'll happen. But this is definitely the most like animated nudity that has been featured on South Park to this point. It's already a dirty show, and you probably don't watch it in front of kids, but there's a lot of just like sexually explicit content in this, so be aware of that. But it's very funny, and it's a good Blu-ray release in terms of audio-visual, clean animation, clean audio, no special features, but funny enough if you want to try it out. Going to the Cohen Media collection, Cohen Media Group. The first one, we have a documentary called Merchant Ivory, the documentary. This is about the famous production company by Ismail Merchant and James Ivory, who they created some of the most acclaimed films of like the 80s and 90s, including Room with a View, The Remains of the Day, Howard's End. So many pivotal movies that got won awards and Oscars and blah blah. So this is a pretty well-rounded documentary where Merchant is unfortunately no longer with us. He died quite a while back, but James Ivory, he's still around to give his input along with many of the performers in the movie and other key figures like producers and all kinds of stuff that just go into this whole kind of production company and their ethos and what makes them special and everything. And they were a very special company, and they have just made some really great movies. And this documentary just captures that and in a very efficient, entertaining way. And this Blu-ray, it just kind of enhances that by including even more special features, including additional interviews with Emma Thompson, Vanessa Redgrave, Helena Bonham Carter, and more. You also get some footage from different festivals that this played at. We get a small documentary on the music supervisor, like the composer of this documentary. So a good amount of extra footage for this that just makes you, it's the type of movie that makes you just fall in love with their work all over again and makes you want to seek out more of their movies. So Merchant Ivory, the documentary, is a good one, and that really set the stage well for the release from Cohen of a Merchant Ivory production, and that was Roseland, directed by James Ivory. So this was a movie from 1977. And this was a really sweet movie. I enjoyed catching up with this one for the first time. You do have some interesting people in here, like Christopher Walken, Teresa Wright, Geraldine Chaplin, Lou Jacoby. Geraldine Chaplin, I'd recently rewatched Nashville, so I'd seen her in that, and so it was interesting to see her again in this in a much different role. But Christopher Walken, I think, is will be the draw for most people. But overall, this is just a very lovely movie. It has three kind of interlocking stories, but it's all set around this Roseland ballroom dancing kind of contest, where people go to just dance, and then there's eventually a competition. So three individual stories that are often very sweet, often bittersweet, but overall it gives some very talented actors room to just really put on some emotional work, and really, like, it deals with like nostalgia for the past, ambitions for the future, what you want out of life, trying to get the most out of your life while you are still on this earth. And I think it all ties together very well in like a very movie that doesn't overstay its welcome. It's like an hour 45 minutes, and it moves along at a very good pace. The second story is the longest. That's the one with Christopher Walken. But the bookending stories, they are both very lovely in their own ways, and sometimes sad, but in a good way. So overall, I'm very glad that this got a Blu-ray release. This comes from a new restoration. I will say I am not intimately familiar with the restoration process or anything, but this seems to take the appearance that a lot of Cohen restorations seem to do, where it does have more of like a golden sheen to it, which typically I see a lot of people have a problem with, and I understand why. It's not aggressive, but it does have a slightly yellow push that may not be completely natural. It seems to be more of a key indicator of a movie that's been restored in like Italy. I think it's La Image Retrovita. They usually kind of have more of a yellow push. I'm not sure if that's where this was restored, but I want to indicate that that has kind of that aura about it on this HD transfer. But overall, I think it looks nice and detailed. Holds up very well. Nice audio. Not much in the way of special features. You have a 10-minute conversation with James Ivory that's newer, and a trailer. So overall, Roseland, very much worth checking out, and I think this is also a nice release from Cohen. And now I am going into one of my most anticipated releases of the year. This is actually the second volume of this series this year, and the first one, the volume 4 that was released earlier this year, was already vying for one of my favorite sets. This one might even top it. This is the 5th volume of the Columbia Classics set. This is Sony just flexing all of their might to present one of the most impressive collections on physical media. They do this time and time again. I've collected all of these. I will kind of delve into all this information by talking about this. But these are 6 absolute bangers collected in one set. I will try to go through all of these and show off all the packaging and all that good stuff. So this opens up to 6 movies here and a nice book here. So I will go title by title, but I don't want to be too repetitive in my speeches, so I do want to just kind of give a general overview of these. So all of these have been given 4K restorations. All of them have been from the original camera negative, except the first one, which is All the King's Men, which comes from a master positive and a duplicate negative. And I'll get into more about how I know about that in a second. All of these have Dolby Vision, and all of them have a Dolby Atmos track, except, once again, All the King's Men, it only has its original mono. So all of them have an Atmos track, all of them have a 5.1 track, except for Tootsie, which has a 5.0 track. And then every movie has a mono or stereo track, depending on the original source, besides Little Women, which had a 5.1 track only, so because it's a newer movie, the 2019 Little Women. So that's just a general blanket for the text, and I'll go into it a little bit whenever I'm talking about each title, but just saying every title has Dolby Vision. It's been newly 4K restored from the original elements. So my first title, I'm going to go in release order, is All the King's Men. I'll get these first 3 titles on the left side out. So we have All the King's Men, the Best Picture winner from 1949. So you got that here. So you have this slipcover here, and then that comes off to get the original poster art here. So these are all classics, so I'm not going to go too much into the plot of any of these. This is a political tale, like as I said, one Best Picture, and it's still as timely as ever. It's just like how power corrupts and all that kinds of good stuff. But this, like I said, been given a 4K restoration of the best available elements. It looks magnificent. This will be something you hear me talk about if each of these transfer. Sony does not play. They always in contrast to the first title I talked about, Nightmare on Elm Street, which had some digital manipulation that kind of made it not as organic as it should be. These transfers from Sony are organic as hell, in the best way. They have all the original textures. They have been meticulously maintained and given the way that they are supposed to look for fans. They do a really nice job, and just the contrast of these, the balance of dark and light, everything about this is practically perfect. I will just issue a blanket statement that I think the set is pretty much perfect, but this, All the Kingsmen specifically, looks great. The mono sounds great. It's been restored, and you get a couple of special features, including a new commentary track and a new making of documentary. So this All the Kingsmen been treated very well by Sony. As with the next Best Picture winner, we have at least 3 Best Picture winners here, back to back, On the Waterfront with Marlon Brando. So if you've ever heard the classic, Could Have Been a Contender, that's On the Waterfront. You should know this if you're a film fan, but if not, this is your chance to catch up on it. And I was just praising Sony, and I talk about how they don't play. They always go the extra mile. They really went the extra mile for this. The only complaint I pretty much have about this set is that there is not a swing case here, so we don't have stacked discs. But the thing that I was super impressed by, so this says disc 2. Underneath that disc is disc 1. So you have disc 1 here. That disc 1 is the 1.66 by 1 aspect ratio. Disc 2 here is the 1.37 by 1 alternate aspect ratio. You have a Blu-ray here, and then you also have another 4K disc here, which is labeled disc 3. And that is the 1.85 by 1 aspect ratio. So for those, just as you follow me, 3 4K discs in 3 different aspect ratios, just because Sony wanted to make sure they were as comprehensive as possible in presenting every possible configuration that fans would want in 4K. 3 4K discs just for 3 different aspect ratios. That is insane, and I love it. It's so fan focused and just like wanting to deliver the most quality presentation. Love that so much. I don't think any other major studio would do that for their films. And it's such a benefit for this film, On the Waterfront. It was previously released on Blu-ray by the Criterion Collection, but this blows that out of the way. I also have that old release. But this 4K transfer in Dolby Vision, fantastic. All 3 aspect ratios. I did not watch this 3 times, but just sampling each of the aspect ratios, it's so great them to have. There's also a featurette that talks about why there are this many aspect ratios and kind of which one, like, you can just kind of pick which one that you want, and just watch all 3, see which one you like the most. But just for those wondering how this differs from the Criterion special feature wise, this has 2 new featurettes on here. It has a commentary track, and it has a couple of documentaries missing from the Criterion set. So hold on to your Criterion set. There's like one on Elia Kazan and like another documentary that has not been carried over to this Sony release. So that release is still special, but they have included some new special features that are very valuable in their own right. And then my third film of 6 films is A Man for All Seasons, another Best Picture winner. This one was in 1966. So this one has some great palace intrigue, and I just love just dudes talking and just like trying to figure out about whether they should allow divorce, and so it's all kinds of wild stuff. So this one, it's very interesting and engaging. like I said, Best Picture winner, 4K restoration, original camera negative. Looks fantastic. This was previously released by Twilight Time back in the day, and then a couple years ago, once that was out of print, Sony really re-released this on their own, and now we are getting this on 4K. So, Atmos track 5.1, mono soundtrack, all sound great. Dolby Vision, 4K, looks great. You do get a commentary track, a new featurette, and an archival featurette. So one thing I want to note is the commentary track is not new, but it was not on the previous Sony disc. It was on the Twilight Time disc that has long out of print. So they luckily rescued that for this 4K disc, and you have even a new featurette. So Man for All Seasons has been taken good care of on this set. Now we're going more towards the more recent movies, and recent is a relative term in some of these because these still date back at least to the 70s for some of these, but they are still classics and some of the most anticipated ones from this set. So the first one that I will talk about, the next in release order, is the classic Tootsie with Dustin Hoffman. About a man who is tired of an actor who's losing out on acting roles, and so goes basically undercover as a woman and becomes a kind of breakout star on a soap opera. So there are some dated elements to this, but it's not mean-spirited most of the time, and it's still a very funny movie. And Dustin Hoffman puts on a great performance. We have people like Jessica Lange, Gina Davis, Bill Murray, a lot of great people in here, and it holds up just as well as ever. This has been previously released on the Criterion Collection, and now is on 4K through Sony. From the original camera negative, looks fantastic, and you get the Atmos track, the 5.0 track, and the mono track. A new commentary track, archival 70-minute making of documentary. You are missing the original Sidney Pollack commentary track that was on the Criterion release, and you are missing some archival making of featurettes and an interview or two. So you're missing a commentary track, some interviews, and archival making of featurette. The 70-minute making of featurette is on this, along with a new commentary track and some other odds and ends. So if you're a fan of, and also deleted scenes, screen test footage, Dustin Hoffman interview, good stuff from Sony, fantastic, basically flawless 4K presentation from them. Next one is the Martin Scorsese Age of Innocence, Michelle Pfeiffer, Daniel Day-Lewis, period drama. So also released from the Criterion Collection. That you might be sensing a theme here, but Criterion knows quality, and they always try to get some of the best movies, and this is a really good one from Martin Scorsese. Much less violent than like his gangster movies, but still a very good movie. 4K restoration, original camera negative, beautiful. I just watched the Criterion Blu-ray earlier this year, and just judging the jump in quality on the 4K is very obvious. Looks very nice. Dolby Vision looks fantastic color-wise, and a lot of like sprawling environments that look really nice, vegetation, all that good stuff. So this has the Atmos track, 5.1, and stereo track. They include most of the special features, including interviews with Martin Scorsese and Jay Cox, a 1993 making of, some B-roll footage, but you are missing a couple of Criterion exclusive interviews. So once again, make sure you hang on to that set if you already have it. But overall, pretty fantastic release of The Age of Innocence. And this is maybe my favorite of the set. This might make me seem not as seasoned cinephile as I should be, but I love this movie. Little Women from Greta Gerwig. I say this just because when you have a set with like On the Waterfront in it, that should probably be your favorite. But I just love Little Women. It's one of my favorite movies of 2019. I think this is easily the best adaptation of this classic novel, and it's just it one that it impacts me a little bit more emotionally than On the Waterfront. But I love all of these movies in this set. This was originally just released on Blu-ray in 2020. Finally getting this on 4K is what I've been praying for. And I think this is also probably my favorite Greta Gerwig movie. Fantastic release, Dolby Vision, Atmos and 5.1 track. The original Blu-ray did not have an Atmos track, so you're now getting that Atmos presentation. The Atmos track really benefits this. It's really nice. And you also get all the original special features from the Blu-ray on that Blu-ray, but you also get a new commentary track from Greta Gerwig and Saoirse Ronan, and you also get a new conversation with them as well, and I just, dream come true for me. Love that. So, great transfer for all of these, but I'm not done showing this off, so those were the 6 movies that we got here, and now I'm going to get the book here, which is not just like a throwaway booklet. This is a essential book here with essays and restoration notes and just so much deep information that is essential for these movies. Just like incredible essays, but also I pretty much on all of these mentioned kind of some of the restoration elements. I wish other labels would do this, but there are dedicated paragraphs of text about the restoration process of these titles. So you get deep information for here's On the Waterfront. You get to know throughout the years what has happened to the original camera negatives, how they tried to preserve things, how they made this new restoration. So fascinating for physical media buffs like me, and I'm sure you, just to kind of dig into and just nerd out over. It's fantastic. So every film except Little Women gets those restoration notes. You still get an essay on Little Women, but I think since it's such a new movie that they didn't really need to talk about the restoration process. Get some good original artwork looks here. And finally, I'm not going to take this out because it's a bitch to get out, honestly, but there's a bonus disc here that is what I think really puts these Columbia Classic sets over the top, because it'll just give you something that unexpected. And in this case, that bonus disc holds 5 silent films that haven't been released before from the Columbia vaults. So these are all about an hour long from the 1920s, and these include The Price She Paid, Belle of Broadway, Ladies of Leisure, Desert Bride, and Scarlet Lady. And these are all on a 4K disc, but they're not all in 4K, and none of them are in HDR. But Price She Paid is a 4K film in SDR. Belle of Broadway is an HD transfer, not in 4K, but it looks fantastic. Ladies of Leisure, another SDR 4K transfer. Desert Bride, HD. Scarlet Lady, 4K SDR. So 5 silent films we probably never would have gotten any other way except in this Columbia Classics set. They always do something like this. Like in the previous set, they did the complete television series of Starman. They always do stuff like this. I love them for it. This is why I love these sets so much, because they just go the extra mile for fans. So these sets are always the release of the year for me, and they always just appeal to my sensibilities the most. Thank you, Sony, for continuing to do these sets. I want as many of them as possible because they are just the best. And I know I'm gushing, but I love them so much. And I think anyone who is a fan of even half of these movies, it's worth them to like become fans of the other half, because these are the ultimate presentations of all 6 of these movies. So the Columbia Classics Volume 5, get it before it's gone, because you will not want to miss out. And that is my show. I appreciate those who have stuck with me. There's so many great titles. Let me know which one you are most excited to check out, which ones you are going to add to your collection. What do you want me to talk about in the future? I want to talk about that for you. I want to dig into it. Share this with anyone that you think might like this channel. Make sure to like this, subscribe to Geek Vibes Nation's YouTube channel. I do this every week. I have even more new titles that I'm excited to talk about next week. Thank you for tuning in. Until next time, enjoy these movies.